It's 7 p.m. on Monday, July 1st, 2024, and I'm going to call this regular City Council meeting to order. I do want to thank those who are joining us in the audience this evening, and if Councilmember Strader would lead us in the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilmember Peretti and Mayor Pro Tem are both absent, or excuse me, Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker are both absent this evening. If I could get a motion to excuse.
Make a motion to excuse both council members.
Okay. It's been moved by Councilmember Strader and seconded by Councilmember Whalen to excuse Councilmember Peretti and Mayor Pro Tem this evening. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried 5-0. And then for staff, we have Director Madden, Director Robeck, Chief Hernandez, and our planning manager Stallnecker, who is also serving as the city clerk this evening. Moving on to citizen participation, we have Jacqueline Whalen.
Good evening, Council, Mayor, and staff. Jacqueline Whalen, Milton, Washington. Couple of things. I've noticed that our logo has changed for the city. And while I understand you can only celebrate a centennial only so long, it's sad to me to see that we have hidden our history as being one of the few cities that established itself back in 1904. And I would hope that you would pass a motion to restore that to our official logo and our gateway signs. Another thing would be, in your budget discussions, it would be lovely to upgrade the sound system so it isn't as harsh as it is. And it would be really lovely to have an official council chambers projector screen set up so that the equipment is always readily available, top quality, and able to project all sorts of information for public participation and for clarity for you as a decision-making body, where your expert could be using their laser pointer and it's right there on the screen for all to see, including the audience. So thank you.
Thank you. That concludes citizen participation. Moving on to additions and deletions. Are there any additions or deletions to tonight's agenda? Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda, if I can get a motion to pass. Councilmember Cedar?
Move to pass the consent agenda as, move to adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Cedar and seconded by Councilmember Strader to pass the consent agenda as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried 5-0. Council, we do have 3 items this evening, and all 3 are action items. The first one's on page 11 of your packet. It is a professionals agreement with Street Scan USA, Inc. for a street and sidewalk condition assessment. I will turn the floor over to Director Madden, and then following his review, we will need a motion to open up the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. The item before you tonight is part of the city's overlay and street condition assessment and priority setting. The city, back in mid-May, went out and looked for a consultant, a group that could help identify the street condition and then prioritize the condition throughout the city of our 32 miles of paved streets that we have. And that way we could have data to support our decision points. The city spoke with 4 different firms providing this service, and the city selected, based on product and price, the Street Scan USA. Street Scan will be in the region. They're a Colorado-based company, but they'll be in the region looking at all of Pierce County. They'll be doing this work for Pierce County. And so to expedite this project and take advantage of some lower costs, the city is proposing to move forward with StreetScan to perform the assessment if the council approves. Recommended action at this time, move to authorize the mayor to execute a professional service agreement with StreetScan USA, Inc. for the street condition scanning and assessment in the amount not to exceed $33,249.
Question? We'll take a motion to open up the floor for discussion. Councilmember Whalen?
I was going to move to open the item, please.
Perfect.
Move to authorize the mayor to execute the professional service agreement with StreetScan USA, Inc. for street condition scanning and assessment in an amount not to exceed $33,249.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Whalen and seconded by Councilmember White to authorize the mayor to execute the professional services agreement with StreetScan USA, Inc. for street condition scanning and assessment in an amount not to exceed $33,249. Councilmember Whalen, did you want to speak to your motion?
Well, thank you. Appreciate that, too. We've done scannings in the past. The technology is different today than it has been in the past. So the accuracy here is something I'm very interested in. Do they do a physical scan? Do they drive every street? They're not looking for anything that's already in streetscapes or Google Earth or so forth. They physically come in and do, and I suspect will provide us with that information, the technical information, the images and so forth as a city property.
That is correct. It is a van outfitted with street scanning software and hardware, and they do a condition based on visual and scanned data points, and then they prioritize it. They look at alligator cracking, potholes. They make some assumptions based on the visual condition of the street for subgrade, and yes.
So you'll have that information readily available to yourself, even if it's not related particularly to street scanning and what we're expecting from them. You're going to have that availability to look at the city, to look at every intersection, to see what has changed or what's happening. And I think that's worth the investment. Thank you.
Councilmember White, did you want to speak to your second?
I just have a couple of questions. The first, I understand the scanning of the pavement and advantages to that. I'm more curious about what is happening with the traffic signs. What are we getting for $6 for each scanning a traffic sign?
They are going to, they provide a condition assessment for the signs. Are the signs failing? Is the reflective treatment adequate? That's the type of information that we'll get back. Are there missing signs? And so that will give us a comprehensive view and identify all the signs throughout the city. We'll then take those data points for both condition assessment of the street and the signs, and we will put those into Cartograph to help us track our overall assets throughout the city.
How will they know if a sign is missing?
It won't show up on the scan. There'll be a pole, but no sign. I see where you're going. Yes, that will give us some information of where we're missing signs throughout the city on public streets, and it'll help us determine if a sign is required in that location or potentially missing.
Okay, and to the best of your knowledge, would you agree that within the city limits on 25 miles of streets, we have 1,104 signs?
Considering all of the street, all of the intersection signs, all of the naming signs, stop signs, yield signs, yes, I'd say that's fairly adequate or accurate. They'll confirm that.
And you agree that $6,000 is a worthwhile expense for just viewing the sign and determining if it needs to be replaced or repaired? It would seem to me that would be pretty easy for city staff to do. it seems like a frivolous expenditure. I just want to know whether you would agree that that is worth spending $6,000 on.
I agree that it is worth it because of the data points that we'll get and the GPS coordinates that we can easily and streamlessly incorporate into Cartograph for our overall asset management of the city. We wouldn't, for $6,000, potentially it could cost more for city staff, and it would tie up city staff resources to go look at the 1,000, let me get the right number, for the quantity of signs that they put forth.
Okay, and then one other question. Under the signs, it says 360 imagery of CL-M. What is that?
What page, Councilmember?
Exhibit B?
Oh, that's lane miles is what that's referring to, 25.
And that's not, well, obviously not
That's,
included in the 25 miles at 200 miles, $200 per mile.
I can follow up to see if that's absolutely critical prior to issuing the contract.
I mean, it's
I
not
believe that refers to striping,
Okay.
which we just conducted throughout the city.
And then the other thing that stood out to me is that they are charging, the fee that they're charging for the software license is based on population. What is the correlation?
There are certain thresholds. Higher populations require higher fees. That is their format of how they calculate fees for licenses.
Well, for example, you talk about they're being used in Pierce County. Pierce County is rural. You would think that the overall area or the mileage would dictate, but, well, I mean, it shouldn't even dictate for a software license because it's just, you're just using software. But that seems like, I mean, do other companies use population in terms of software licensing? Because I've never seen this before.
They do. Many grants use OFM's population calculations. Also, I've seen that before in both Cartograph and Esri. They create certain tiers of cost thresholds based on population. And the reason why is lower population communities are charged less because they are disadvantaged. That's the thought process, I believe, without speaking directly to their marketing supervisors.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Hall, did you still have a question?
So we're doing it this year, if we pass this. Then would we do it again in several years? Because we're gonna knock off some of those items, but other streets may need either be moved up or moved down, you know, how often would we?
Many communities do this every other year, and so they'll conduct a street scan. I don't know if that is absolutely necessary for Milton at this point. What is necessary, though, is that we gather this data in a way that we can incorporate it into our asset management software. The 2 years application, or the 2 years of software, that is where they host all of their information, but they'll provide it as a deliverable in a way that we can take that information and incorporate it directly into Cartograph.
That was my next question.
Yeah.
Okay. One more question. If I think about all,
Okay. Councilmember Strader?
So are you telling us that you don't have a database of all of our street signs then? You don't have an inventory of what we have at this time?
What we have is Excel sheets that don't have GPS location identified with them. We have Excel sheets with general quantities, but they're not correlated to location. And so it's difficult. This will provide greater insight into where these signs are and what they are.
Okay, and what is it hands down that makes this company stand out above the others?
For us, it was price. and in product. They are well-known in this industry, and Pierce County, recommended them. They've been working with them for a while. I conducted in a past position with a different agency, a street scan. It was with a different company, but they are delivering a similar product that is very usable, user-friendly, and can be incorporated into the asset management, which is what we're really after.
Okay. And I didn't see it in the language, but maybe I missed it, but this data collected becomes the property of the city of Milton. Is that correct?
The data will be property of City of Milton.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Councilmember Whalen?
Just a little follow-up so my understanding is a little bit clearer. We're investing a significant amount of money to get this data that we're going to use to apply to the benefit of the citizens of Milton and the traffic in the city of Milton. What do you expect to just say, get from this that can be accomplished in the next year? Once you get this and so forth, there's going to be a rank order, there's going to be information about it and so forth. But how quickly would we incorporate information from a study like this into the benefit for the traveling public in the city of Milton? It won't be next year we'll be talking about the first project. I would hope it would be something sooner. Can you give me a little idea of how you're going to utilize this fairly rapidly to the benefit of the citizens of Milton?
We will use it to support our decision-making for overlay projects. We'll also use it to help submit with grant applications through TIB for overlays to help confirm the city's prioritization of certain lengths of street.
And I ask that because we do have a transportation improvement package. And we know that we have streets that for the last 40 years have been deteriorating to the point where they're, well, embarrassingly ill-repaired. But I'm not blaming anybody, it's just what happens and so forth. I can ride a few streets in the city of Milton that for the last 40 years have had no improvements. I don't know what kind of rank order they get. I'm on 13th. 13th gets a lot of traffic, and 13 is a mess. It's probably the second worst. 12th is probably worst. Seems like more emphasis is put on 11th between Oak and Taylor, which is not an arterial. It's not a collector. It's a neighborhood street. But that one's gotten 3 or 4 times the investment in repairing that particular road, while these other roads sit pretty stagnant. You also get up to 17th, and well, 17th isn't the worst one, but there's others that sit for years with nothing, relatively nothing, or ill-repaired. And I'm just trying to talk to citizens and so forth to see how I can gain their confidence and understanding that this is going to accelerate. Even roads we do know are ill-repaired. This is going to do something. How do I encourage them to understand that this is well-spent money? I believe it is if it's utilized correctly. It's just one of those things where we set aside a certain amount of money for learning, but we don't really set aside enough money to repair. And if we set this aside, are we going to spend $33,249 in physical repair? Because this is just a program to tell us where we're going wrong. How much are we setting aside to correct what they tell us in the next year? Do we have a budget? Are you going to establish a budget for that?
That is the overlay budget within the 310 project. And one of the things that we built into the budget this year was this assessment in 310 to help prioritize those streets and confirm where the city's spending their funding. 12th and 13th are problematic for other reasons outside of just straight pavement condition. But I'm sure you've been hearing that for many, many years. And so both the water comp plan, the storm comp plan, and now the street assessment, our goal is to take all of the information, put those together to help prioritize grant requests and city project prioritization.
And I've always heard 12th and 13th, I'm going to take those as an example. They're not going to fix the road because the water mains, all need to be replaced. But we've known that for 40 years. And it just sits in the shadow. And the same excuse for as long as I've been on council or as long as I've been in the city of Milton, it's the same thing. We can't fix the road because we can't pay for the water mains. But we've known the water mains have been not in good shape for at least as long as we've known the road's in bad shape. So it almost becomes this overall excuse for not doing anything. And I'm sorry to say it that way, but there's a lot of other streets that are just as bad as those two, sections and so forth. Just, I'd like to see in a year, using this and what we learned from it and what we've accomplished has been worth our investment. And I think a year or maybe a little bit longer, we can actually say, this helped us do this and we've accomplished this. My thoughts on it, and thank you. I'd like to see the information when it comes out to see what how they rank order things.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Councilmember White?
You mentioned that we would own the data, but when I look at this, this is just a snapshot in time. How long is that snapshot of data useful?
Typically 2 to 4 years, which is why many other communities are rescanning every other year or every 3 years, because you're right, it is a snapshot in time, and the goal is, with all asset management, is to create a living condition assessment, where you're constantly updating that information to give you relevant feedback. And so what we would do is we would take this street scan, we would work within their software. We download the data points that they deliver for the snapshot in time into Cartograph, and then we would constantly be upgrading both Cartograph and the Street Logic with improvements that have been conducted, with the goal of, at the end of this 2-year cycle, having a current understanding of the street conditions. The other thing that I should say that this will also provide is it will either support or make recommendation for the city's overall overlay budget item. So are we putting enough towards streets, or is more required? And that's another decision point that I really want to pull out of this scan.
Does this in any way help us receive state grants?
It gives us information to support our grant requests, which potentially could make our grant requests rank higher.
Okay, and then the last thing with regards to owning the data. This is a software license. Do you have a way to export this data into the city systems, or is the data that we own cut off after 3 years unless we renew the software license?
We'll take the data points that they deliver and we'll incorporate those into Cartograph. But you're correct, if we don't renew this contract with Street Logic in a few years from now, we will lose access to their portal. We'll still own the data points that they submitted as part of this effort, though.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Any other questions from council? It is an action item. Are there any comments? Jacqueline Whalen?
Jacqueline Whalen, Milton, Washington. When the results come in, I hope that they could be partnered with my prior request of council reviewing the street profiles where you have a cross-section of road and see sidewalk, roadway, bicycle lane, landscape strip, and such. And the other thing I would say is bumpy roads are traffic calming. People slow down on narrow streets and rough roads. So I'm one of those who sees that paving to being picture perfect smooth as having a downside as well. So thank you.
It's been moved by Councilmember Whalen and seconded by Councilmember White to authorize the mayor to execute the professional services agreement with Street Scan USA, Inc. for street condition scanning and assessment in an amount not to exceed $33,249. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried 5-0. Council, moving on to our second item this evening. It's found on page 25 of your packet. It is Resolution 24-1974 for setting the public hearing for a vacation of a portion of Diamond Street. I'm going to turn the floor over to our planning manager, and then following her review, I will need a motion to open up the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So just a brief overview, a refresher course on how petitions work to vacate a street. The way our code is written is it's sort of multi-stepped. The first is for a applicant, someone who is adjacent to the street. You can also only petition to vacate a part of a street if you are adjacent to it. They apply to the city and pay the fee. Then the council sets a resolution to set a public hearing. They hold the public hearing, and then at a subsequent meeting, they would actually, after the applicant has paid the appraised value of that property to the city, they would grant the vacation through an ordinance. So this is one of 3 meetings that this will be brought to the council. So if you want to look on page 29 of the map, it's probably the easiest to see what we're doing. Back in 2020, the blue was vacated, and the adjacent property owners were, again, the right-of-way goes back to that property owner, and they paid the city whatever was considered the fair appraised value at the time. So the blue part is already vacated. It's no longer right-of-way within the city. The property that is adjacent to the little red has requested that their portion now be vacated. I believe at the time that the current ownership at the time was asked if they would like to the south half. At the time, the owners that were currently owners declined. These are new owners. It came up in conversation, and they are very much interested in having that property vacated and returned to their possession. You have to think of right-of-ways as like, again, I always say there's special easements. They're like an easement. They're like, we don't own the property, but we have like exclusive rights to it. But if we decide we don't need them anymore, they go back to the adjacent property owner. So in this case, the city has determined, we feel that the staff feels that there is no need for that right-of-way. All the houses have access off of 11th. And so what we would like to do tonight is we recommend that council adopt the resolution, which sets the public hearing on August 5th. The current, and we will provide the full appraisal at that time, but the appraised value that we were provided in the documentation is $2,500. We would hold a public hearing on the 5th, and then it would come back on August 19th as an ordinance after they have paid the appraised value. So if there's any, that's the end of my little spiel.
If I could get a motion to open up the floor. Councilmember Cedar.
I move to adopt Resolution 24-1974, setting a public hearing on August 5th, 2024 for the vacation of a portion of Diamond Street west of 11th Avenue.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Cedar and seconded by Councilmember Strader to adopt Resolution 24-1974, setting a public hearing on August 5th, 2024 for the vacation of a portion of Diamond Street west of 11th Avenue. Councilmember Cedar, did you want to speak to your motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. It's interesting because when I saw this, I was actually a little surprised. I'm familiar with these landowners, and this property was having grown up just a block from here. And I don't know what calculus to use to decide if this is a good action, so I appreciate the staff's recommendation. What I do know is that that property is unusable for anything other than what they're trying to do, which I think is build a garden. That's what it looks like, at least as we've watched them clear the area. And that connection, it looks more feasible in this diagram than it actually is. That Diamond Street will never connect there, nor would it be useful to anybody based on what's around there. So I support this action. I think it's a great thing that the city can grant to someone that requests it through the process.
Councilmember Strader?
Yeah, when I was reviewing this, it looked like you stated that that property was offered to the original owner, the owners that were at that property before, they just didn't take it up. And so I think it's just makes sense to go with the ordinance, so I have no problem. Just one question is, do we have any utility lines going through there, sewer or water? Or?
Yeah, so if there is any current easements, we would, in that final ordinance, make note that we retain those easements. So yes, if the, and we will verify that, but yes, we would retain any easements for any current lines or future lines if they're there currently.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council? Councilmember Whalen?
Well, thank you very much. I remember vacation petition for the other properties next to this. And I believe we have retained, of course, utility easement across the property, which this would also retain, a utility easement, but it would become their ownership. That's the way this would say. So it would be burdened with that easement through the property if the city wanted to accomplish that. And I think by what has occurred on Diamond Street and other locations, it makes sense to vacate the properties. So I don't have an issue with this. I guess the only question is to the appraisal value, or how do we structure that?
They provided us an appraisal, so we can either accept it or choose to have a second appraisal if we aren't happy with theirs. But the way I believe it is stated is that they're supposed to provide us appraisal, which they did. So we just need to evaluate it.
Well, I think we should do nothing other than what was similar to the vacation easements that were surrendered in the past in this particular area to match what we did then. And I don't have that document with me. Somewhere in my office I've got one.
Yeah, no, and I used the past ones as templates for this one, so.
Yeah.
And I also talked to the attorneys to make sure that it still is the proper process.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other comments from council? Okay, it is an action item. Are there any comments from the audience? Jacqueline Whalen?
Jacqueline Whalen, Milton, Washington. It sounds like if you set a hearing, that means, yes, you're going to do it. Grant the vacation, because what I heard in staff discussion led me to that conclusion, that this is not a usual public hearing process where council will take findings of fact, approve with conditions, or deny. So that was one thing to clarify. The other thing is, that's the full value of the property, $2,500 for 3,000 square feet. I'm curious about the assessment and sad that it's not in this packet. My assumption is that future development may mean that they have to dedicate road to the city again as property develops out there. Another question, it seems as though the center lines are shown on the map, and by the way, thank you so much for the site plan. But what is on the interurban trail, that gray line that seems to go from the trail into the yellow colored lots? Is that a roadway? Is that access to the interurban trail? It may be a good spot to consider that maybe we do want to, it's not quite appropriate to this, but another access point to the interurban trail. So those are just some questions, and I appreciate council's thought and staff's work on this. Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Okay. Let's see. It's been moved by Councilmember Cedar and seconded by Councilmember Strader to adopt Resolution 24-1974, setting a public hearing on August 5th, 2024 for the vacation of a portion of Diamond Street west of 11th Avenue. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried 5-0. Council, moving on to our last item this evening. It is on page 33 of your packet. It's Resolution 24-1975. It is, let's see, declaring the existence of an emergency for project number 155. I'm going to turn the floor back over to Director Madden, and then following his review, I will need a motion to open up the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. In June of 2024, the city terminated Reed Trucking, who was the low contractor at the time of bid for Project 155. Termination was due to Reed's failure to comply with the obligations of the contract. This resolution, in working with legal, this resolution is required to identify an emergency contracting environment, which allows formal bidding requirements to be waived in order to select a new contractor. The two primary reasons that the city is requesting access to emergency contracting provisions is that the funding for much of this project came from a TIB grant cycle. Those funds need to be, they need to be used in order for TIB to not recall them. So that is one reason. The other reason is this intersection improvement project will facilitate and support freight traffic through this area. That freight traffic is related to the bridge development, and it is anticipated that freight traffic will increase towards the end of 2024 and in 2025, requiring these improvements to be made prior to that. At this time, the city's recommended action is moved to approve Resolution 24-1975, declaring the existence of an emergency relating to Project 155 State Route 99 at Porterway intersection improvements.
Would someone like
move-
to make, oh, thank you, Councilmember Strader.
I move to approve Resolution 24-1975, declaring the existence of an emergency relating to project number 155, State Route 99 at Porterway intersection improvements.
Second?
Please.
It's been moved by Councilmember Strader and seconded by Councilmember Hall to approve Resolution 24-1975, declaring the existence of an emergency relating to project number 155, State Route 99 at Porterway intersection improvements. Councilmember Strader, did you want to speak to your motion?
Certainly. It's just, it's sad that we had to get to this juncture, but it's absolutely necessary to move on forward with the project. And I understand that we do have some deadlines to try to meet with the state and their projects, so, which makes it imperative that we get moving.
Councilmember Hall?
I couldn't have said it better. I totally agree with you.
Any other comments or questions? Councilmember Whalen?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the agenda item. I'm going to go a little bit different direction. I've never been, or I don't remember when, we never had the city attorney come to explain this. They should be here in the council chambers.
We had an executive session on this topic, Councilmember Whalen.
I'm sorry,
We had an executive session regarding this topic.
but that was not in public. This would be in public. We're taking a large step here, and the attorney should be present. We've had attorneys hired by the city who are full-time employees. We've had other circumstances where issues like this, which are attorney-driven, let me just put it that way, or sanctioned and so forth, where they come to speak to the public on record, recorded, which is the appropriate way to do it, in my belief. And it's always been the way we do it. Side of that, very critical that we do this now. And I understand the time constraints. I do understand what's happening with the potential for other issues developing on that intersection and freight delivery and so forth. So I do support it. But I'm speaking up saying that this degree of involvement by the city and potential litigation needs to have an attorney's name presence on this. I'm still going to go ahead with this, but nowhere do I see anything saying, well, our advice from the attorney was this or that and so forth, which is what we're dependent upon. And so it's the public to make sure it's done right. So that's my piece.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from council? Okay, it's an action item. Oh, sorry. Councilmember White?
Yeah, I'm just over here by my lonesome. Just a quick clarification question. What's the difference in time frame between going through the normal bidding process and being able to choose someone? Well, I'm assuming you have someone in mind. Would that be correct? Somebody that can step in right away?
We have not spoken with any other contractors. Well, there are other contractors, that facilitate this type of work that are local. This is the first step. And this form, this resolution was developed with our legal team. And to answer your question, approximately 3 months to post a project, have bid time, have contract development time. And what that 3 months would do is it would push us out of the construction window to install any kind of storm facilities. And basically it would delay the project further.
Okay, and what is your best guess in terms of if this resolution is passed, how long would it take you to find a replacement contractor?
I have a goal of 3 weeks of negotiating, but I don't have a firm number on that. There's a lot of variables in there.
But you believe you can find a replacement to keep the project on schedule?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council? It is an action item. Are there any comments from the audience? It's been moved by Councilmember Strader and seconded by Councilmember Hall to approve Resolution 24-1975, declaring the existence of an emergency relating to project number 155, State Route 99 at Porterway intersection improvements. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried 5-0. Moving on to council reports. Councilmember Whalen.
Just let me make a note here. I have a little bit of an issue with a long-standing item on Milton Way. And I had mentioned something in the past about the appearance that the post office was being used as parking. Well, fortunately, that stopped. But unfortunately, what happens is that parking lot that's utilized within that building is 100% saturated with cars parked, not legal spots, parked in the roadway, parked in the front and so forth, and access for, let's just say, something occurring in that building and so forth limits the access to or from that building. I think, Mayor, you're aware of the situation, or you were aware of it when I mentioned it first. And you were aware of that it appears they were using off-site parking someplace else. It's a safety issue. Now, the reason I'm asking that is I know we're taking another avenue and so forth for code enforcement. A little bit different and so forth. I haven't seen much in publications about how to proceed, because there are other issues in code enforcement, issues that were addressed by the city, which have grown back into a problematic concern for intersections and line of sight issues and so forth. But when are we going to see how we're going to do it now? I've looked a little bit on the website, but I'm not clear about exactly. Is a citizen still going to have to go out there and take pictures? Is a citizen going to have to and read through the code, or what is the citizen involvement? And I don't think I've seen that on the website or easily found it. So I'd
Yeah.
I'd like to be informed about exactly how it's done. You can put that in writing.
Yeah, Planning Mr. Soniker, didn't you send that link out to council? Or did I not? I thought you did. I can resend it. It's at the bottom of the website. It says, what's the exact verbiage? Code violation or code compliance?
Actually, at the very top, it says, "How do I?" And you just hover over the "How do I?" and it pops up and it has submit code violation. And you
But I
just-
also think it's on the very bottom too. So it's in two places, one at top, one at bottom.
Yep, it's on both
Um,
the top and the bottom.
You just have to hit the link. You don't have to put any of your personal information in there if you don't desire. You don't have to put any photos. You don't have to put any code. You can simply say, I believe the church on Milton Way is over parking, and hit send. And it will go directly to the Public Works Department.
I don't know if that's going to the public as easily as you make it sound. You gotta, look at the page and so forth. But I'm not sure if the public is really as informed as I'd like to see them do that. So I'm gonna look at the page again. And if it's difficult to utilize, I'm gonna let you know. If it's easy to utilize, fine. Well, I'm just looking for a way that I set this request in a year and a half ago, you took care of it, and now it's not working. The same thing with the parking and a few others, just to catch up and how easy it is. I had to bring my computer back. It's just city computers. I'm not sure what went wrong with that, but I'll try that again. But there are things that they're back, and the city worked on these items, and the city certainly drives around the city and sees that the failure of what they did a year ago is present. It shouldn't have to take another activity by a citizen to say, what you did last year failed.
Okay.
It should all be kept in mind. So, just a question about tree trimming in the city of Milton. And there's a very good project going on that's clearing about 2,600-foot trees, roughly, and so forth. Is that code? Does code participate in that? Does code do anything about how to do it, when to do it? Is there a permitted issue?
Our code does not regulate trees on single-family lots.
I'm sorry.
The code does not regulate trees on single-family lots.
Well, it's on two lots. This family, another one's coming, and so forth. So single-family lots are disappearing, basically. So I didn't know if there was something else that needs to be addressed with it. They're doing a great job. Don't get me wrong. They're doing an excellent job. I just didn't know if there's any concern, regulation, and so forth about a tree, a 100-foot tree that's on a property line, and what it effects might do for the next neighbor. Most of these trees, if they were just to fall, will fall outside of the perimeter. It's just something that's going on, so I'll look for that now, and I appreciate the reminder.
Okay. Yeah, we can resend that out to council as well. Councilmember Hall?
Well, I appreciate the street striping. It looks good. And also, it happened the same day as our garbage and recycling, and those trucks did a good job going around those painted streets. So kudos to that. That's it.
Councilmember Strader?
One thing I wanted to bring up is about the fireworks. I'm noticing tons and tons of activity going on. I'm not just in the city, but all around. I think that it's something that we need to bring up at one of the meetings now and fully address this. I believe we had citizens come last 6-7 months ago and asked about having something further done. So I think we need to readdress that issue.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, because Councilmember Hall, I know I'm remembering correctly because Councilmember Hall actually asked me about this. Council brought it up either at a retreat or a meeting, and you all wanted to put it on the ballot. So I came back with the information either via email, I believe, to say that we needed a committee to head that up. And then I heard nothing back from council. So if that's something you want to revisit, we can talk about it again. But it's something that needs to be driven by a committee, I believe.
Okay,
if you still want to go on the ballot as a whole.
Yeah, I think, yeah. I
Okay,
think we need to discuss that, bring that
Okay.
back to the table.
perfect.
And there was one other issue I was going to, just lost my train of thought here. Anyways, that's good enough. for
Okay.
today. Thank you.
Councilmember Cedar?
Thanks, Mayor. I have three things I want to talk about. I'll talk about fireworks first because that's what I wanted to talk about. And a note of correction for you, Mayor. I disagree that all of council wanted it on the ballot. I believe
Okay.
that we as a legislative body should take the action. Nobody wants fireworks in Milton that has any responsibility. And I think that it's just absolutely derelict for us to sit here and do nothing every year and whine about it. And that's what I'm hearing from citizens too. Everybody asks me, why don't you do something? You're on council. And I say, well, you know, people want to see it on the ballot instead. And I think it's really speaks not well for our ability to get things done. So I would support, and I still support, us just deciding it and getting it done so in 2025, we don't have to worry about fireworks anymore. At least we have a law on the books. I see the chief nodding, and I appreciate that. Second, police visibility. I want to compliment our police. I made a call, and they respond quickly, and that was wonderful. But beyond myself, I talked to a lot of people in the last 2 weeks, and my gosh, I feel like with the summer months, you know, things just, people get weird in the heat, and the police have been everywhere. I have just been blown away. Every time I turn around, I feel like I'm seeing an officer, and it's just wonderful in Milton to see that. So thank you, Chief, and for all of your hard workers. And finally, great to see you, Director Robicki.
Thank you for the correction. I should have used the word majority of council, so I apologize. Councilmember White?
Yeah, I would like to wish everyone a happy holiday on the 4th of July. I am one of the council members that think that this something as impactful as altering the way people are able to celebrate our independence should have a direct input on it. So I would like it to go to the ballot so that we can once and for all know what our community thinks about it.
Okay.
Thank you.
On to director reports, Director Madden.
Last week, the city was on its backup power supply due to some work down on 20th Street in Fife, requiring electrical reroute. As of Saturday, the city is back on its transmission supply, which eliminates the risk for a branch that happened on last Thursday hitting a power line to take out power to the whole city. So that issue has been resolved. I spoke with TPU today and is anticipated 2 to 4 years from now, due to the 167 project, that the city will lose its backup distribution tie. And so we are actively engaged with TPU, with BPA, and other providers to look at other backup power options for the city. So we are not as at risk to a tree or a car versus pole situation. So just wanted to give council a little bit of feedback and let you know that we're back on our transmission power supply.
Director Robeck? Chief?
Just wanted to give you an update on Officer Haney. He did go to an inpatient rehab facility yesterday. Spoke to him this afternoon. Unfortunately, he was taken to the emergency room to have some things done. He's had some complications, but it looks like they're going to send him back to a rehab inpatient hospital facility. So again, all your prayers and positive thoughts for him and his family, and to hope that he recovers quickly, but at least 6 months or maybe more, depending on whether or not we continue to have complications. So he is very thankful. I talk to him usually about every day for all of the positive energy and thoughts and prayers. And so continue to hold his family in your thoughts and prayers, and we'll continue to hope for the best. But again, it continues to be, as I have said, not to be a Debbie Downer, but we still are plagued, but we're not any different than anybody else across our country or our county, We had an armed robbery yesterday at Taco Bell. The individual was able to get away. They were wearing a mask. And of course, you saw the property damage from a DUI that same day. So our officers continue to stay busy. We just recovered a stolen car right before I came here. We continue to recover stolen cars every day. So again, be vigilant, keep your head on a swivel, and continue to support your police everywhere and thank them and wave at them. And if you get an opportunity, shake their hand, because we need all the encouragement we can get right now. And, you know, our police presence, we're more determined than ever to continue the fight. And I was out there today myself, cruising around the city. But I will certainly pass along to our young men and women that the council supports them and their community supports them. And we appreciate all your support.
Planning Manager Stalnecker?
Thank you. Actually, a couple of quick compliance updates. We had sent do not occupy as well as compliance letters to both properties that the police had to deal with. The one that had the homeless encampments as well as the one that had the marijuana grow. I've heard back from both property owners, and we're working out a kind of a work plan agreement to timeline how much time they have and what the expectations are to get both of those properties cleaned up and hopefully back and usable. We are also, I know we are working on some of the properties that Councilmember Whalen has talked about as being kind of reoccurring, and I'm hoping in the next couple months to bring some proposed changes to the code that will help it make it easier for us to deal with those. There's a couple of ways that the code is written that makes some of those a little more complicated, and I'd like to simplify that moving forward. So we are working on those, and hopefully, like I said, in the next couple months, we should be able to bring those changes and proposals to you.
That's it. I too, like Councilmember White, just want to wish everyone a safe and happy 4th of July. As a reminder, 911, our South Sound 911 has asked that you only use 911 for emergencies. If you have an issue with fireworks, to use the fireworksreport.com to file a complaint or violation. That's all I have to add tonight. So seeing that all items have been concluded, I'll call for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any objection? Meeting adjourned at 7:58.